So Ankur, how do you work with brands and help them grow, or it's just the money, or it's the partnership of helping them understand the playbook? So how does that work?
We are very strong believers that capital, and today the reality is that capital has become a commodity at the end of the day. We go far beyond that. So the first part of it is playbooks, and we continuously keep upgrading some of those as the world's moving very fast in today's AI era. The second is how do we partner with some of these ecosystems. So we've got teams dedicated who works very closely with an Amazon or a quick commerce platform, or Meta and Google for that matter. So the entire pipe from discovery to sales. In fact, how do you work with offline folks like a mall operator, or how do you establish your COCO stores? What kind of signals do you see that the offline store is working? Some of those playbooks and some of these ecosystem partnerships is the starting point. But at the heart of it is the team. We do have people who have great operating experiences in different facets of the companies, whether it is about how do you set up the right people function, how do you think about scaling online GTM. These are folks who've been there, done that. They've seen what works, what doesn't work, what are the blind spots to be avoided. What we do collectively is all of us come together, and as the founders need different spots, we go deep in engaging with these founders, whether it is through our team as well as through the advisors, where interventions are required when the founder needs it. And it is not a cursory conversation. It goes deep into actually understanding the problem statement, working in the trenches with the founders, and ultimately solving for the problem with a view on the big picture and with a view on the long-term value creation. And hence, a collective effort of what all of us bring to the table, meaningfully engage with the founders, leverage our playbooks, our ecosystem connects, our advisors to be able to drive right value for the founders. And that is where our core focus lies.
Interesting. And when you partner with the firms, brands, what are some things you monitor? Like if you could share some, like I'm a very analytical person. So what are the some KPIs you monitor, whether it's operational, capital, marketing, growth?
The stage is more about how are you able to see signals of a product market fit, whether it is in terms of the repeats, whether it is in terms of the returns, the retention, the reviews, the ratings. So there are a lot of those which come into play in terms of what are the signals which are indicating that your product is working. Then how do you then build the right NPD pipe to be able to experiment more with the same set of consumers or beyond, and see what's the portfolio construct for your brand. And as you start moving from that journey is about how do you get into the channel market fit, whether it's quick commerce, whether it's offline, whether it is Amazon, whether it's D2C. What's the right, by that time you would have a clarity on who the consumer is, what's your proposition that's working, and hence the signals then you start seeing is, can I meaningfully expand channels?
Can you give me some example of KPIs, and especially in marketplace you look at?
So I think again, different categories have different nuances to it. I can talk about nutraceuticals, for example. When a lot of nutraceutical brands in our portfolio scale on platforms like Amazon, what we're seeing is that it is a lot brand search led, which means that the consumer has discovered or made up their mind to shop. They're coming onto an Amazon platform and shopping for some of these brands. When that happens, and to the tune of 70-80% at times, sales is led by brand searches. There are two things that happen. One, you're not trying to fight to be discovered on Amazon.
Yes.
B, the conversions are much higher. Now that to me is a great CM2 profile for a brand which is scaling well on Amazon. So we are consistently seeing a lot of, for example, Nutra brands at the right time scale up on Amazon and some of the other platforms. But it's also the repeat behavior.
So you mentioned brand search, which is basically there is a top of mind recall and they're going. So rather than saying, give me the best magnesium gummy, rather than it's the brand name.
Yes. So the brand is not getting discovered necessarily always on Amazon. There is, of course, a set of people who are discovering the brand on Amazon. A lot of discovery is happening outside. So
because of a social media, whatever, word of mouth. Whatever.
That's right. So a lot of consumers are discovering, interacting, trying to understand what the brand is talking about, what is the differentiation, does it talk to their needs and aspirations, and coming onto an Amazon, for example, in shopping. So there are a lot of those kind of consumers in a category like nutraceuticals, where the consumer is coming in with pre-decided brand and the category in mind. And that is when, a meaningful signal of saying, can you scale on Amazon and marketplaces is where we monitor it.
Nice. And when it comes to something different between like it's a only online brand versus an omni-channel brand, what are 2-3 KPIs you really look to know somebody in like 3 questions?
I don't know if 3 is enough, but I think the important point is what's the right, ultimately, whether it's online or offline, what you're trying to solve for is every penny a consumer is spending on my brand, am I able to make it viable from an economic standpoint? And hence the dreaded LTV to CAC ratio, as we refer to, it could be very different in terms of channel, because there will be some cross-channel leverage. B, in isolation, is this channel, it may not be today, but directionally possible to be viable? Because every channel eventually has to be value accretive to the business. And third is the role different channels play could be different in terms of, one could be pure play brand building. One could be a lot around trust, experience, but may not see that kind of conversion. And hence then the choices you make in terms of what kind of capital you're putting behind the channels, what kind of growth you expect from these channels could be different. So it's not a one size fit all or 3 questions. I wish it was that easy, but irrespective whether it's online only or it's an omni-channel, I think there are signals to be derived at the stage, especially at which we come in, and then form a view on saying what it could look like, with the fact that it could be very different than today what we're envisaging.
So you mentioned LTV CAC, and so when a brand is new in the first 2 years of operation, how would they know LTV? Because the data point is so less. So
I think there are good early signals that start to show, right, in terms of who is the consumer who's likely to come back. So there's a lot of clarity on not only the consumer profile, but what kind of consumers are coming back. What is driving this LTV, which is essentially what's driving retention for the consumer.
So repeat rates is the most important.
I think more than just the repeat rate, it's the behavior understanding of saying, why are people repeating for folks who are repeating, and also why are folks not repeating? So I think there is a lot of merit in understanding both, and when they are repeating, what kind of behavior they are showing. It is not only important to solve for how do you sell more to the consumers who are repeating, but it's also equally important to address, and it's never going to be 100%, but to say the consumers who are not repeating, whether they are unhappy about the product experience, whether they're unhappy about the post-purchase experience, or in fact smaller things like how's been the unpackaging experience, right? So every nuance of that matters. It's very important or your product is not talking to the right audience. So they bought the product, but after first consumption, they're unsure whether they want to continue. And that is where you see founders go back to the drawing board every time and now, and relook at people who are retaining as well as people who are not retaining. A lot of brands, for example, conduct this concept called NPS, where they're talking to customers who are not retained to understand why they didn't retain and what were the detractors in the journey. I mean, for example, today when I'm seeing some of the brands, I'll give you an example for Yamaha, which is in the mental health space. Today they are trying to solve for people who really need to have couch therapy when they walk into offline clinics. They buy a package, let's say 4-5 sessions. Some consumers will see through the journey of 4-5 sessions and then even come back and buy more. There'll be some who will not come back after the first session. The reality is, it is a lot about the chemistry between the therapist and the patient. It is a lot about what strikes the consumer or the patient rather when they walk into a setting which is a great setting in terms of how Yamaha has constructed it. But something strikes them to say, what is the path that I'm walking down to? I don't want to be open to anybody else. I don't want to talk to anybody else about my problems. Am I trying to overthink the problem? Now, these are factors which are not in your control. What's in your control is, have you made the best matchmaking in terms of the therapist, the problem, and the kind of the pen profile of the consumer. It's very deep understanding which is required. A lot of data goes behind every conversation. Has to be analyzed in a way, right? I mean, you've been into analytics, and I'm sure you agree that the conversation being analyzed is not the easy one. It goes beyond that. It goes beyond data into behavior understanding. And some of those come into play when you start thinking about building LTV to CAC. I think when you get some of these right, LTV to CAC is just an outcome.
Yeah. In fact, you mentioned the evolution of retention. So, if you look at 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the definition of retention was to just get the customer repeated. And like you buy product 1, now you have to buy product 2, product 3. So that is the very classical definition of retention. During when there was no digital and only loyalty program. Now, if you see the last 4-5 years, especially after the internet boom has come in, it's more about retaining the attention of the person on the website. Traffic aa gaya, app install ho gaya. Now, how do I get them to even buy?
Yes.
You're entered the store. Am I able to get you to experience the product and then buy it? Like we were talking, ki eye test kara liya, ya matlab you just go and sit on the sofa and then experience it, lie down and just chill out. And then the third definition which I'm seeing now, which is coming, is in the social media world. Okay, so social media mein, if you see, we spend 3 hours and in every 2 seconds or 1.5 seconds, we just swipe up. So retaining the attention in that. And if you see, most people are now looking at the retention graph of the reels. So वहाँ पे जो एक ऐसा आता है ना, if you're going like this or this, and in fact, I also look at my podcast कि लोग कितनी देर में, like people are dropping off at 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes. So that's the big thing which is about retention, and definitely it's about money. And lastly, when you mentioned about ENPS, it's such an important thing. One big mistake which I have seen, Ankur, is लोग ना ENPS को सोचते हैं कि it is about measuring the experience. But what's the question of NPS? How likely are you to have the customer refer to friends and family?
That's right.
So it's not about repeating. मैं जाके next step जा रहा हूँ कि I'm being a advocate, which is a growth metric. It's not an experience metric.
Yes.
But the fallacy what is also happening in the world is कि there are targets on ENPS. Okay, आपने स्टोर लगा दिया, अब स्टोर मैनेजर को बोल दिया योर टारगेट इज टू गेट 70 एंड अबव. वो क्या करेगा, कस्टमर को बोलेगा सर मुझे प्लीज 9 या 10 दो, नहीं तो मेरी इंसेंटिव कट हो जाएगा, ये हो जाएगा. तो योर दैट मेट्रिक ऑल्सो बिकम्स फ्रॉड. एंड वी हैव ऑल हैव एक्सपीरियंस्ड इन कार सर्विस, विल मेक आवर लाइफ हेल. तो this NPS and all, and the good part is many of these digital companies, they do the service digitally. And yes. WhatsApp भेज दिया, so it's a little unbiased. Now that's one challenge I have seen कि please don't put a incentive program on top of this or a performance management, but because your signals will go biased.
Yes.